At a high-level military gala in Washington, a confident SEAL Admiral noticed a quiet woman in a simple suit standing alone by the bar. Assuming she was just a civilian guest, he approached with casual charm and asked, "So, what's your call sign?" expecting a laugh. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and answered calmly, "Fleet Commander." His smile froze. The room went silent. He had just mocked a retired Vice Admiral who once commanded entire fleets. What happened next would teach him a lesson about respect he'd never forget. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The ballroom was packed with important people. Military officers in dress uniforms, politicians in expensive suits, defense contractors who built weapons and ships. Everyone was talking, laughing, making connections. The kind of event where one conversation could change your career. In the middle of it all stood Rear Admiral James Keller. Everyone called him Havoc. That was his call sign from his days as a SEAL team leader. He looked exactly like you'd picture a Navy SEAL Admiral. Strong build, confident smile. When he walked into a room, people noticed. His uniform had rows of medals and ribbons that told stories of combat and courage. Bronze stars, Purple Hearts, missions in places most people never heard about. At 52 years old, Keller was a legend. And tonight, he knew it. A group of younger officers stood around him, listening to one of his stories. He was good at this. He knew when to pause for effect, when to smile, when to let the tension build before the punchline landed. People laughed at the right moments, nodded with respect. This was his world. Then he noticed someone who didn't belong. A woman stood alone by the bar, about 20 feet away. She looked to be in her late 40s. Dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a gray business suit. Nice, but nothing flashy. No name tag like everyone else wore. No medals pinned to her jacket. No military rank visible anywhere. She wasn't talking to anyone. Wasn't smiling and working the room like everyone else. Just standing there with a glass of water, watching. Keller figured she was probably someone's wife. Maybe a guest who got separated from whoever brought her. He excused himself from his group and walked over. It was the polite thing to do. Make the outsider feel welcome. Ask a few friendly questions. Show some leadership. "Evening," he said, giving her his best smile. "I don't think we've met." "Jim Keller." She turned to look at him directly. Her eyes were gray and calm. "Good evening, Admiral." So she knew his rank. That was something. First time at one of these events, he asked, keeping his voice friendly. "No, just one word. Not rude, not friendly, just a fact." Keller decided to try something different. Among military pilots and special operators, there was always one question that broke the ice. The call sign question. Everyone had a story about how they got their nickname. Civilians usually loved hearing about military culture. He grinned a little wider. "So what's your call sign?" He expected her to laugh. Maybe say she wasn't military. Maybe admit she was someone's date who felt a little out of place. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye. "Fleet Commander." Her voice was quiet, steady, completely serious. Keller's smile died on his face. The noise around them seemed to disappear. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. People turned to look. Someone nearby actually dropped their glass. "Fleet Commander." That wasn't a joke. That wasn't some nickname from a civilian job. That was a real call sign. The kind you earned commanding carrier strike groups. The kind that meant you were responsible for thousands of sailors. 4 aircraft carriers worth billions of dollars. For decisions that affected entire regions of the world. Something cold dropped into Keller's stomach. He had just asked a senior naval officer, probably a retired Vice Admiral who'd commanded at sea, if she had a call sign. Like she was a tourist. Like she didn't know anything about the military. The woman's face didn't change. She just took a sip of her water and waited. The entire room had gone silent. Her name was Rebecca Hale. Vice Admiral Rebecca Hale, retired. Though tonight, nobody knew that. She had arrived at the gala an hour earlier, alone. No escort. No entourage. She walked through the registration table, declined a name tag, and made her way into the ballroom without anyone looking twice. Just another face in business attire at an event full of uniforms and power. That was exactly how she wanted it. For the past 3 years, Hale had lived quietly in Colorado Springs. a small house with a view of the mountains. She consulted occasionally on naval strategy for think tanks and defense companies. The work was private, low profile. She'd answer questions over secure video calls, write reports that nobody outside classified circles would ever read, and then go hiking with her dog. She didn't miss the spotlight. Never wanted it in the first place. But 3 years ago, when she still wore the uniform, Rebecca Hale was a legend. She was one of the first women to command a carrier strike group. Not because of politics. Not because someone needed to check a diversity box. She earned it the hardest way possible, through a deployment in the South China Sea that became the stuff of naval history. It was 2019. Tensions were boiling over in disputed waters. A Chinese destroyer had locked fire control radar on one of her escort ships. Her carrier group was outnumbered. Communications were breaking down. Washington was 12 hours behind and couldn't make decisions fast enough. Junior officers were panicking. The situation was seconds away from shots fired. Hale made a series of decisions in under 3 minutes that de-escalated the crisis without surrendering an inch of international law. She repositioned her ships with surgical precision, sent exactly the right communications at exactly the right time, gave the Chinese commander a way to back down without losing face. It worked. No shots fired. No lives lost. No international incident. But it could have easily gone the other way. One wrong move and hundreds of sailors would have died. Maybe thousands. Maybe it would have sparked something bigger. The Pentagon studied her decisions for months afterward. Her radio transcripts from that day became required reading at the Naval War College. Other commanders called her for advice before their own deployments. That's when the call sign stuck. Fleet Commander. Not because she demanded it, because every officer who served under her knew it was the truth. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight she was just a middle-aged woman in a gray suit standing by the bar. No uniform, no medals, no visible proof of who she was or what she'd done. The young officers networking nearby saw her and looked right past her. To them, she didn't fit the picture. Military leaders were supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way, command attention just by standing there. She was invisible, and the painful irony was impossible to miss. The most experienced combat commander in this entire ballroom, someone who'd made life-and-death decisions that saved hundreds of lives and prevented a war, was being mistaken for a civilian guest. A Navy captain had approached her earlier, assuming she was a journalist. He'd actually started explaining basic naval tactics to her, talking slowly, using simple words, like she needed help understanding how ships worked. She'd listened politely, asked one precise question that exposed a flaw in his logic, then walked away before he realized what had just happened. Now Admiral Keller stood in front of her, frozen, finally understanding who he'd just spoken to. But the damage was already done. The question hung in the air between them like smoke. What's your call sign? As if she didn't have one. As if she didn't belong. As if 30 years of service and a career that changed naval doctrine meant nothing because she wasn't wearing the right clothes tonight. Hale took another sip of water and waited to see what the Admiral would do next. To be fair to Admiral Keller, he wasn't wrong about himself. He was a legitimate hero. That wasn't ego talking. That was fact. 3 combat deployments in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, missions in Syria, Yemen, and half a dozen other places that were still classified. His Bronze Stars weren't handed out at ceremonies. They were earned in compound raids at 3 in the morning, in firefights where everything went wrong and his team had to shoot their way out, in decisions made in seconds that meant his men came home alive. Havoc wasn't just a cool nickname. It described exactly what happened when his team hit a target. In the SEAL community, Keller was royalty. Younger operators studied his missions. Commanders asked for his advice. When he walked into a room at Naval Special Warfare Command, conversations stopped out of respect. He'd earned every bit of it. But there was something Keller had never done. Something his entire career had never required. He'd never commanded a fleet. His world was small teams. 12 men moving through the dark. Missions measured in hours. Get in. Complete the objective. Get out. The longest operation he'd ever run was 3 days. His decisions affected dozens of lives at a time, maybe 100 on a big mission. Rebecca Hale's world was completely different. She commanded 5,000 sailors, an aircraft carrier, guided missile cruisers, destroyers, submarines, 80 aircraft, assets worth $12 billion moving together across an ocean. Her decisions played out over months, affected entire regions, shaped how nations behaved toward each other. Keller operated in hours. Hale operated in theaters. It wasn't better or worse, just different, completely different. But here's what happened at events like this. The SEAL Admiral got attention, got recognized, got congratulations and handshakes, because people understood his world. Movies got made about it. Everyone knew what a SEAL team did. Nobody made movies about carrier strike group commanders making careful decisions that prevented wars. As the gala continued, Keller recovered his composure. He mumbled something polite to Hale and stepped away, his face still red. Within minutes, other officers found him. A Marine general clapped him on the shoulder. A congressman wanted to congratulate him on his recent promotion to Rear Admiral. The circle reformed around him. Meanwhile, Hale stayed by the bar. She watched the room with the calm detachment of someone who'd seen this dance 1,000 times. Watched young officers networking hard. Watched defense contractors working their contacts. Watched everyone performing for each other. She sipped her water and didn't move. Then a young Navy captain spotted her. Mid-30s. Confident stride. He'd probably made 06 early and thought he had the world figured out. He walked up with a friendly smile. Enjoying the event. It's fine, Hale said. First time, these things can be a little overwhelming. He glanced at her suit. Are you with one of the contracting firms? Or press? Neither. Ah. He nodded like he understood, though he clearly didn't. Well, if you have any questions about the Navy or what we do, feel free to ask. I just came off a deployment commanding a destroyer in the Pacific. Happy to explain how things work out there. Hale's expression didn't change. Which destroyer? He told her, mentioned his patrol route, started explaining his mission parameters like she was a civilian who needed the basics broken down into simple terms. She listened without interrupting. Let him talk for about a minute. Then she asked one question. When you were operating near the Spratly Islands last month, what was your protocol when Chinese maritime militia vessels closed within 500 yards of your position? The captain blinked. We followed standard. How did you know we were near Spratlys? You just told me your patrol route. Her voice was patient, almost kind. But you didn't answer the question. If those militia boats were within 500 yards, your acoustic signature would have been compromised for any submarine operating in the thermocline layer. Which means you either adjusted depth for optimal sonar conditions and risked a collision, or you maintained safe distance and lost tactical awareness. So which was it? The captain's mouth opened, then closed. His confident expression cracked. He had no idea how to answer, because the question revealed something he hadn't even considered during his deployment. A gap in his tactical thinking that could have gotten people killed. Hale took a final sip of her water. Enjoy the evening, Captain. She walked away, leaving him standing there trying to figure out who he'd just been talking to. Across the room, Admiral Keller watched the entire exchange. He was beginning to understand exactly how badly he'd underestimated the woman by the bar. The gala was in full swing when everything changed. A senior Pentagon official, Deputy Undersecretary Chen, was mid-conversation with a defense contractor when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face went tight. He excused himself immediately and walked quickly toward a private side room off the main ballroom. Within 2 minutes, word started to spread. It moved through the crowd the way urgent news always does among military officers. Quiet conversations, serious faces, people checking their own phones. The mood in the room shifted from relaxed networking to focused tension. There was a situation developing. Eastern Mediterranean. Right now, a U.S. carrier strike group had encountered aggressive posturing from a foreign naval force near contested waters. Details were still coming in, but the initial reports weren't good. The foreign ships were closing distance. Radar locks, radio challenges, the kind of brinkmanship that could go wrong fast. Communication between the strike group and Washington was breaking down. Satellite delay, confusion about rules of engagement. The commander on scene was making decisions in real time, with incomplete information. Commander Sarah Vickers. Early 40s. Capable officer. Good record. But this was her first carrier group command. She'd never faced anything like this. Never had to stay down foreign warships in contested waters with the whole world watching. And she was 12 time zones away from anyone who could help her. The Pentagon needed answers. Fast. They needed someone who'd been in this exact situation before. Someone who knew how to de-escalate without backing down. Someone who understood the difference between showing strength and starting a war. The problem was, that kind of experience was rare. Deputy Undersecretary Chen came back into the ballroom and spoke quietly to a Marine general. Within moments, senior officers were being pulled aside. Admiral Keller, a 2-star Air Force general, a Coast Guard Vice Admiral, a few others. They moved quickly to a back conference room normally used for hotel meetings. Staff cleared out. Security locked the doors. Inside, laptops were opened. Satellite feeds loaded slowly. Someone pulled up a digital map of the Eastern Mediterranean on a large monitor. Red icons showed the U.S. carrier group. Blue icons showed the foreign vessels closing in. The room filled fast. 15 senior officers crowding around tables. Everyone talking at once. "We need to show strength," one Army general said. "Put fighters in the air. Make it clear we're not backing down." "Aggressive positioning," another voice added. "Close the distance. Show them we're not intimidated." "Air superiority demonstration," someone else suggested. "Buzz their ships. Let them know what they are dealing with." The suggestions came fast. Loud. Confident. These were people used to making decisions. Used to being listened to. But there was a problem. Every suggestion was tactical. Aggressive. The kind of thinking that worked in ground combat or airstrikes. Direct action. Overwhelming force. Show dominance. Nobody was talking about de-escalation. About international maritime law. About giving the other side a way to back down without losing face. Because nobody in this room had actually done this before. Admiral Keller stood near the map, listening. He knew his limitations. He'd never commanded at sea beyond small boat operations. Never been responsible for a carrier group. Never had to manage a standoff where one wrong move meant hundreds dead and a potential war. He looked around the room. Saw a lot of confidence. A lot of strong opinions. But no real answers. The Marine general was still talking. "If we show weakness now, they'll keep pushing. We need to." "Wait." An Air Force colonel near the back of the room looked up from his phone. His face changed. "Isn't Rebecca Hale here tonight?" The room went quiet. Admiral Keller's head snapped around. "What?" "Rebecca Hale," the colonel repeated. "Vice Admiral, retired. She commanded Carrier Strike Group 9 during the South China Sea incident. If anyone knows how to handle this, it's her." Someone else spoke up. "I heard she was at the gala. Someone mentioned seeing her earlier." Keller's mind raced back to the woman by the bar. The woman in the gray suit. The woman whose call sign was Fleet Commander. The woman he just treated like a civilian guest who didn't belong. His face went pale. "She's here," he said quietly. "I saw her." Deputy Undersecretary Chen turned to him. "Can you find her?" Keller was already moving toward the door. He pushed back into the ballroom, scanning the crowd. His heart was pounding now. Not from danger. From the crushing realization of what he'd done. He dismissed her. Patronized her. Asked her if she had a call sign like it was a joke. And now they needed her. Desperately. Because out in the Mediterranean, a young commander was facing the exact same situation Rebecca Hale had faced years ago. The situation that made her a legend. And Hale was the only person in this building who actually knew what to do. Keller found her still standing by the bar. "Admiral Hale," he said, his voice different now. Respectful. Urgent. "We need you." She looked at him for a moment, then set down her glass and followed. When she walked into the conference room, the atmosphere changed immediately. Officers who'd been talking over each other went quiet. Not because she demanded it, because something in her presence commanded it. The way she moved, the way she looked at the map on the screen with eyes that had seen this before. She didn't introduce herself, didn't explain who she was, just walked straight to the monitor showing the Eastern Mediterranean. "Current positions?" she asked. Someone pulled up the latest satellite data. Red and blue icons clustered together. "Too close." Hale studied it for maybe 10 seconds, then asked her second question. What's the weather? A Navy commander blinked. Weather? Clear skies. Calm seas. Wind speed and direction. He checked. 12 knots. Northeast. Third question. What's Commander Vickers' last communication? Deputy Undersecretary Chen pulled it up on his tablet. Read it aloud. The message was tense, uncertain, asking for guidance that Washington couldn't give fast enough. Hale nodded once. Okay, I see the problem. She turned to face the room. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. This isn't about firepower, she said. Everyone's thinking tactically. Air superiority. Aggressive positioning. Show of force. That's exactly what will make this wise. The Marine general started to object. Hale held up one hand. He stopped. The foreign commander is operating under political pressure from his capital. He has to look strong, but he doesn't actually want to fire. Neither does Commander Vickers. Both sides are trapped in a situation where backing down looks like weakness. She pointed to the map. Right now, our carrier group is positioned in a way that blocks their claimed territorial route. We're legally in the right under international maritime law, but that doesn't matter if someone panics and pulls a trigger. Hale outlined her plan in 3 clear phases. Phase 1. Commander Vickers repositions the carrier group 7 nautical miles to the northwest. Still in international waters. Still asserting rights. But it opens a corridor that gives the foreign ships a path that doesn't require them to retreat. Phase 2. Adjust radar and communication protocols. Stop active targeting locks. Shift to passive monitoring. Send a clear signal through positioning and radio protocols that we're not escalating. Phase 3. Commander Vickers sends a specific formal communication citing international maritime law and offering acknowledgement of their presence without conceding territory. Give their commander something he can report back to his superiors as a win. You're giving them an exit, Hale said. Not backing down. Not surrendering anything. Just letting them save face while we maintain every legal right we have. She referenced a similar incident from her own deployment. Different ocean. Same dynamics. She described the exact radio message she'd sent. The repositioning she'd ordered. How it worked. The room was silent. Everyone was listening now. Admiral Keller stood near the back, watching. He realized he was seeing something most people never witnessed. A completely different level of command. Not the loud tactical confidence he was used to. Something quieter, deeper. The kind of expertise that came from making these decisions when lives actually hung in the balance. Deputy Undersecretary Chen was already on his phone, relaying Hale's recommendations directly to the Pentagon. The room waited. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Updates came in slowly. Commander Vickers had repositioned as Hale suggested. The foreign ships were responding. Radar locks dropped. Communications shifted tone. 4 to 5 minutes in, the foreign vessels began to adjust course, taking the corridor that Hale's repositioning had opened. 1 hour later, both groups had separated. No shots fired. No international incident. The crisis was over. The conference room exhaled collectively. Younger officers looked at Hale with completely different eyes now. The woman they'd walked past all evening. The woman they'd ignored. Admiral Keller approached her as others started filing out. Admiral Hale, he said quietly. No smile now. No casual charm. I'm sorry. I should have known who you were. She looked at him. Her expression wasn't angry. Just tired. Maybe a little sad. You weren't supposed to, she said. That's the point. She walked past him, heading back toward the ballroom, leaving Keller standing there, finally understanding what real command looked like. Rebecca Hale left the gala the same way she arrived. Quietly. No goodbyes. No fanfare. She walked through the ballroom, collected her coat, and disappeared into the Washington night. Just another person leaving another event. But the officers in that conference room would never forget what they saw. Because here's the truth about real leadership. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need a uniform or medals or a stage. Real authority doesn't announce itself. It just shows up when it's needed and does the work. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the most experienced one. Competence is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself in conversations. It proves itself in crisis. When lives are on the line. when decisions matter, when there's no time for ego or performance. Admiral Keller learned something that night that 30 years of combat couldn't teach him. There are levels of command beyond the battlefield. Levels most people never see. And the people who operate at those levels often do it invisibly. They don't need you to know their names. Don't need recognition. Don't need applause. They just carry the weight and move forward. Before you assume someone doesn't belong, ask yourself, do you actually know who you're talking to? Before you joke about authority or make assumptions based on appearance, remember this: respect isn't about the rank you can see. It's about the missions you'll never hear about, the decisions made in rooms you'll never enter, the sacrifices made by people who don't need credit. That night, as Hale drove home alone through empty highways back to Colorado, Admiral Keller stood in the ballroom replaying the evening in his mind. Two words kept echoing: Fleet Commander. Not a joke, not a mistake. A reminder that the most dangerous assumptions we make are about the quiet people who've already proven everything they needed to prove. They just don't need to prove it to you.